Good evening, everyone. Oh, that went smoothly. Okay, well, good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening. Wonderful. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the FIFSW Alumni Association 2024 Distinguished Speaker Series lecture. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charmaine Williams, and I'm the Dean and a Professor at the Factor-Inwentash Faculty of Social Work. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening, both in person and online. In a moment, I'll be inviting our Alumni Association President, Andrea Allen, to the podium to provide a land acknowledgement and to introduce our distinguished speaker. But before I do, I'd like to share some brief words on our lecture series and the program for this evening. The Factor-Inwentash Faculty of Social Work Distinguished Speaker Series was established by our Alumni Association in honor of the faculty's 100th anniversary in 2014. Each year, the Distinguished Speaker Series brings a leading-edge thinker to our faculty to explore groundbreaking issues in the field of social work. By fostering dialogue around crucial social and societal challenges, these lectures benefit students, alumni, researchers, and the broader community. I would like to thank our Alumni Association for all their work to organize this event. In particular, I would like to thank our Alumni Association President, Andrea Allen, and the Alumni Association Board for their dedication to ensuring lifelong learning opportunities for the faculty's alumni and the community at large. As many of you know, throughout the academic year, the Alumni Association hosts monthly talks and workshops for its members, as well as for students and the general public. If you have not yet attended an Alumni Association event, I really encourage you to sign up for the faculty's monthly newsletter to learn about upcoming lectures and workshops. This faculty is fortunate to have such a highly engaged alumni community, and we are truly grateful for all that they do. For those joining us online, I would like to remind you that you may submit questions for the Q&A portion of the evening using the Q&A button on the Zoom webinar screen. We will be monitoring your questions and we'll ask them on your behalf while also taking questions from our in-person audience. For those of you joining in person, I hope you will stay after the lecture to enjoy some refreshments at our reception and reflect on what I'm sure will be an extremely thought-provoking and inspiring talk. It is now my pleasure to welcome the FIFSW's Alumni Association President, Andrea Allen, to the podium to provide a land acknowledgement and to introduce this year's distinguished speaker.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, those who are here in person and those who are online. Thank you. Thank you, Dean Williams, for that very kind introduction. The Alumni Association is very blessed to have had the opportunity for our studies to be at the faculty. I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and today, this meeting place is still the home. It's still the home of many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. To our diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis comrades, we stand beside you and express our solidarity as we live and work despite our history on this land. We all have responsibilities to be active players in decolonization. We enact them by learning, showing up, speaking up, about injury, needs, and desires of our Indigenous comrades. I smile because of what's going on outside our door. I must also acknowledge, like me, people who were brought across the transatlantic trade, people who were not brought here with a choice, many of which many of us know very little about, those who traveled on the transatlantic trade ships. We must acknowledge people of other nations that came to this land by choice through colonialism, many of whom have forgotten that they're settlers. We give thanks to our Indigenous ancestors for their patience, but acknowledge that it has been exploited. As we come from our respective homes, can we take a moment and reflect on the Indigenous people whose lands we sit and sleep on each night? If we could take a few moments. This reflection is not performative. It is our indication that we're prepared to stand with our Indigenous comrades towards their reclamation. It is now my pleasure to welcome you all and to introduce our guest speaker. This is on behalf of the Alumni Association, of which anyone who's a graduate of the faculty can join us. I'm honored to introduce our distinguished speaker this year, the Honorable Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard. Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard is highly regarded. She's a social worker, educator, researcher, community activist, and advocate for social change. She was appointed to the Senate of Canada in 2016 and is the first African Nova Scotian woman to serve on the Senate. She continues with her advocacy and her advocacy on social justice and anti-Black racism. Dr. Bernard was the first African Nova Scotian to be hired in a tenure-track position at Dalhousie University and to serve as director of the School of Social Work there for over 10 years. She's a founding member of the Association of Black Social Workers and a founding member and current president of the Acadian Empowerment Academy. Some of Dr. Bernard's areas of practice includes working in mental health at the provincial level and in rural community practice at the municipal level. She has worked with organizations to bring diversity to the political processes in Nova Scotia and has served as a member of the National Coalition of Advisory on the Status of Women. Dr. Bernard has been qualified as an expert witness in Nova Scotia, British Columbia, and Ontario, particularly in the area of race, racism, human rights, and the impact of racism. She has received many honors for her work and community leadership, most notably the Order of Nova Scotia and the Order of Canada. We're very grateful and very honored to have our distinguished speaker this year, the Honorable Dr. Wanda Bernard Thomas. Thank you.
Good evening. In my next life, I promise I'm going to be tall. When I stand here, I can't see, so I'll sort of stand to the side. So Dean Williams, Ms. Allen, thank you very much for the invitation. And you know, it's not every day that we get to have an event like this with 3 Black women organizing, hosting, speaking, presenting. Isn't that in itself incredible? Especially when we're here in a place where we once were not even allowed to enter, right? So it's not lost on me, and I was having a conversation about this with someone in the restroom. I'm not sure who you were. I don't remember seeing. The young lady there puts her hand up. We were having this conversation in the washroom. And you know, it's a very stark reminder of our journey. The journey that we've had to be here, to be in these spaces, to occupy the positions that we occupy. We haven't arrived here without struggle. But we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to be on Indigenous territory, and we're grateful to bring our voices here. So I'm delighted to be here. Took a year, but thank you for your patience. So I've titled this talk, Africentric Social Work, Creating Empowering Pathways and Opportunities for Black Families and Children. And what I want to do with you this evening is sort of take a walk back, looking at Africentric social work in Canada and how it began. And then I'll talk a bit about some of the challenges and supports on this journey. And then talk about leading change and some examples of Africentric social work, empowering pathways, creating opportunities for Black families and Black children. Looking forward. So we start by looking back, and then I hope to end the evening by looking forward. And bringing Africentric social work from the margins to the center. So I want to invite everyone who's here with us here at Hart House at the University of Toronto, but also those of you who are joining us virtually. I want you just to center yourself in the moment, center yourself in the space that we're in right now. And think about who you are and what you bring into this space. So think about your own social location. Think about how that matters. Think about your power. Think about your privilege. What do you bring into the spaces that you go into? Think about your experience of marginalization and oppression. And think about the structural barriers and how the structural barriers that we have to overcome just to be present in spaces like this, to do the work that we do, and especially doing that work in social work. I normally like to move around a bit, but I don't think I can because of the online. We don't want the people online to not hear. So if I look a little stiff, it's because I'm not in my natural state of being. I want to be moving around. When I think about change, and I think about the journey of trying to bring Africentric social work into social work in Canada, I think about the multiple levels on which change has to happen and the multiple levels on which we engaged in bringing Africentric work to the forefront. Starts with the personal. It has to start with the personal. You can't do this work if it's only on a 9 to 5. So it starts with the personal and then the professional. But it also needs to be political. This work is very political. And the personal, the professional, the political all feed into policy. Policy is really what drives the work that we do. It's really what drives the issues that we're dealing with every single day as social workers, as social work educators, as parents and grandparents and community members and community leaders. Policy and the implementation of policy is very much a part of the work that we do, and again, we need to do that integration. So I thought what I do this evening is bring the W5. So the W5 of using an Africentric lens in social work. And I want to highlight the fact that it really is a journey. It's not a destination. It's been a journey. And what I want to do with you this evening is share with you some of the stories along the journey. So let's start with the why. Andrea mentioned this in her land acknowledgement. And sometimes some people are a little uncomfortable with land acknowledgements. I really appreciated yours because you invited us to pause and just sit with it for a moment to reflect. And I think that's really important. And settlers often talk about this. One of the things that I often say is, I don't consider myself a settler because I was settled. My ancestors were settled here. My ancestors didn't come here by choice. My ancestors came to this land as enslaved people. My ancestors came on those slave ships as part of the transatlantic slave industry. And today's anti-Black racism has its roots in that transatlantic slave movement. A few days ago, I asked a question in the Senate of the government representative in the Senate. I asked the question about when Black Canadians would receive an apology for the enslavement of our ancestors. Now, of course, I don't ask those questions to get an answer. I learned that you don't get answers to these questions. So I raised the question to raise awareness. I raised the question to just heighten people's awareness. And as part of the lead up to Emancipation Day, so you tell me now, if we didn't have enslavement in Canada, why are we recognizing Emancipation Day? Right? But I made the mistake yesterday of looking at some of the social media. And it was so violent. Some of the comments were so violent and so vile. And it almost stopped me in my tracks. And I reached out to one of my parliamentary affairs director, and I said, you know, I'm just reminding myself why I no longer use X. Someone else put it out there, I didn't. And they said, you know, it's a reminder of why you need to keep doing it. And I'll talk more about that later. So it's the when. So when are we using Afrocentric social work? When are we using an Afrocentric lens in our work? We use it to address the impact of systemic anti-Black racism. We use it to address the everydayness of anti-Black racism that Black Canadians see in every aspect of their lives every single day. It's not something that happens some of the time. It's not something that only happens in part of their lives. It's every day, everywhere. You know, that's the reality of the racism. That's the reality of the anti-Black racism. So when I think about the when do you use an Afrocentric theoretical perspective? You use it to address issues of justice. You use it to address issues of education. You use it to address housing gaps. You use it to address employment. You use it to address issues pertaining to health and wellness and well-being. You use it to address the impact of racism, the trauma of racism, the trauma that until recently people didn't even name as a trauma. And that's a typo. It says where. I was looking at my notes and realized I meant to change it, but I got here. I started talking to people. That should be the what. This should be the what. So what are we talking about? When we're talking about addressing the impact of racism, and the trauma of racism, when we're talking about addressing the legacy, the impact of the legacy of anti-Black racism and the transatlantic slave trade, we're really talking about reparations. And that's what makes a lot of people nervous. And that's why we don't have an apology. And part of that is because people tend to think of, when they think of reparations, they think of reparations and they see dollar signs. When you hear the word reparations, what do you think of? I'm sure if I asked you in this room, you know, when you hear reparations, yes, I saw that. Someone in the audience did this. Yes, people think money, but reparations are beyond, it's not just about money. So yes, money is a part of it, but it's not the only part. When I think, these are two photos from my home community in Nova Scotia. But if you think about reparations and social work, it's about righting the wrongs, correcting the wrongs. Social work itself has brought harm to our communities. If you think about social work, and social work is supposed to be about social change and supposed to be about social justice. Social workers are supposed to be doing good, positive things. But we know there's been a history, a legacy of social work bringing harm to our communities. So that's part of what we're talking about when we're talking about bringing that Afrocentric lens into the work. And so then how do we do it? How do we do it? So Jerome Shealy has these 4 key tenets of Afrocentric theory, and we use these in direct practice, but we can also use them in community practice. We can also use them in our teaching, in all of the work that we do. So that collective identity, the spiritual nature of human beings, that interconnection of all things, and the affective dimension. So bringing those 4 components into our work and bringing those, centering those in our work. So that's part of the how we do this. But then how do you break it down? One of your distinguished alumni, Dr. Dave Est, I think maybe online this evening, who's a professor emeritus now from the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. He and I developed these practice principles, sort of taking those key tenets and then using these practice principles. We developed these practice principles. And, you know, I think one of the most exciting things about that work is that schools of social work around the country still use, we wrote that up as in a book chapter, but people are still using that book chapter from 2002. From using that work. So taking those practice principles and applying them in our work. And when we're working with students really want to know, you know, so how do we apply theory in practice? How do we do that? So these are some of the examples, some of the ways we do that. And then where do you use Afrocentric social work? I say absolutely everywhere. So we use it in direct social work practice. We use it in practice with families. We use it in practice with groups and communities. We use it in research. We use it in our work in policy work. We use it in social work education. I want to show you this book, Africentric Social Work, edited by Dr. Dolores Mullings, who's now a VP of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Memorial University. Jennifer Clark, formerly a professor from Ryerson, now Toronto TMU. I'm struggling still with the new name. Myself, Dr. Dave Est, and Solomon Giwa, who's at Memorial. This book, I'm gifting this to someone, so someone's going to win this tonight as a door prize. So someone's going to leave here with this book. My luggage is heavy, so I'm not taking it back with me. But you know, this book, we published this in, sorry, I can't remember. I think it's 2 years old now. 2021, we published this. But I think this book has really helped to move Africentric social work from the margins to the center. I think most schools of social work across the country are now using this book in some way, in some courses, or using some chapters from it in some courses. And when I think about that, I'll tell you, it's exciting, because I'm going to tell you a bit about how we got there. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. And so when I think about the journey, it's really been about embedding Africentric principles into every aspect of our social work, starting with an Africentric worldview. So really getting people to think differently about the way that we see the world, seeing the world differently. It's about Ubuntu. I am, therefore you are, therefore I am. So embracing our humanity, bringing that notion of humanity and kindness into our work, into our practices. It's about Sankofa, you know, the rough translation, go back and fetch it, but learning from the past and then building on the past. When I think about, I think about being first in far too many things. Some of that's in my bio. My ancestors have been here since the 1700s. I shouldn't be first in anything. Absolutely not. And the fact that I am, it's a reminder to me of the opportunities that were not given to my ancestors. It's a reminder of the racism that my ancestors endured and didn't have the tools to deal with. And it's also a reminder of how hard they worked to make a better future. And so I know when I stand in a space like this, I may be short here at this podium, but I actually feel 10 feet tall. And it's more than a feeling. I am 10 feet tall because I'm standing on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I'm often going back to them for wisdom and guidance and direction, especially when things are really difficult, especially when I read such vile comments online about me, a person who never ever wants to say an unkind word to or about anybody. It can cause a lot of harm and a lot of trauma. But then I'm reminded of how my ancestors dealt with far worse, with dignity intact, and how they kept going. So yes, I'm 10 feet tall. And then I think about the principles of the Nuzo Saba. Some people celebrate the Kwanzaa, the principles of Kwanzaa, but I think if we bring those principles into our everyday lives, and that's what Dr. Marenga Karenga intended when he created them back in the early 60s. And guess what he was dealing with as a graduate, a postgraduate sociology student? He was addressing gang violence, trying to find a way to address gang violence. And what are we dealing with today? If you wait long enough, things that go around will come back, right? So how do we use these principles to create change? When I think about my journey, I would say one of the things was the positive disruption, critical reflection, and the ongoing critical reflection is so important. And then leading change. So just leading the change I wanted to see. So when I think about myself and 3 other women who formed the Association of Black Social Workers 45 years ago, yes, I was a baby. How could I have been involved with this organization for 45 years? When I look back, we had the audacity to believe that if we worked together, we could change things. We had the audacity to believe that we could change policy. We had the audacity to believe that things could be better if we brought, back in those days, we didn't have the language of Africentric theory, but we were using the language of Black perspectives and bringing Black perspectives into our work. And that's what we did. So let me tell you a bit about that journey. When I graduated in 1977 with my master's degree in social work, my first job was in the mental health. And when on my first day of work, I worked in Nova Scotia, at the Nova Scotia Hospital, which was the largest, it was a province-wide mental hospital, mental health institution. And I walked in there, and my first day, I was sitting in the social work office, waiting for my orientation and, excited. The ink was barely dry on my master's certificate. A 6-foot-tall Black man came into the room. He weighed about 350 pounds. He came over to me and started patting me on the head. And I was terrified. After all, I was in a mental health hospital. Imagine my ignorance. Why was he excited to see me? There weren't too many Black people working there. And he saw this Black woman in the social work office. He was so excited. And I learned so much from that moment on about how I needed to engage with everyone. And especially people in our community who are the marginalized within those of us who are marginalized. And I continue that journey. And so when we formed the Association of Black Social Workers, we did so because we were frustrated with what wasn't happening in the social work community for our community. And then in 1990, even after I graduated from Dalhousie, I continued to be involved. There was a committee called Minorities Task Force. I continued to be involved with them. We wanted to create a course on anti-racist social work. But we were afraid that in 1989, 1990, we wouldn't get that approved. So we called it cross-cultural issues. And guess what? They approved it. But guess what we taught? Anti-racist social work. Positive disruption. Leading the change we wanted to see. Feeling the fear, but doing it anyway. And then in 1990, that's when I was hired. I was the first person, as Andrea mentioned, first Black person to teach in the School of Social Work at Dal, even though they'd had an affirmative action policy in place since the 70s. There was no shift in the curriculum or who was doing the teaching until 1990. And so that course became a required course. I was teaching it. And then I was also teaching a generalist social work course. And I started by introducing one module on Africentric perspectives. Now it was a full year course, so that's what, 12 and 12, 24. 24 modules, and I had one on Africentric. And I remember the feedback at the end of the year, students, what do they call those? Evaluations. oh, Wanda's a great teacher, but she had a few too many Black examples. Let me tell you how I dealt with that. I thought I was brave by doing one module. Obviously, I didn't do enough. So the next year I did more. And the next year I did more. And by 1999, I was brave enough and bold enough to say, we're going to do a whole course on Africentric perspectives in social work. 1999. And I started by doing a research project on Africentric perspectives in social work with the Association of Black Social Workers in Nova Scotia. By that time, we had about 25 or 30 people. We started with 4. By that time, we had grown a little bit. We did this research project. And then from that project, I built a course. So you see what I was doing? Using the master's tools to change the way we were doing things in the master's house. Positive disruption. And so when I started that course in 1999, I had a vision that every school of social work across the country would surely do the same thing. But it didn't happen right away. But it's starting to happen now. So our text came out in 2022, 2021. In 2023, Dalhousie University, after a 2-year development process, has started a cohort, an Africentric cohort. They have 36 students of African descent studying social work as a cohort together. First in the country. First in the country. I'll tell you, if that isn't bringing Africentric social work from the margin to the center, I don't know what will. So what are some of the stories? When ABSW started in 1979, we started because of what we were seeing with Black children in the child welfare system. Black children who were being re-traumatized and re-traumatized and re-traumatized because of placements in white homes. In placements in white homes where they experienced racism and other forms of violence. And no one paid attention to them. So that was the first bit of work that we did. And then one of our graduate students, Veronica Marsman, when she was doing her master's degree, she did a program called Search. And it was a program for white parents and grandparents and adoptive parents of Black children. That was back in the 80s. We're still running that Search program today because, you know, there are multiracial families. And how do people learn how to embrace all of who they are if they don't have some opportunities to learn how to do that? And so that Search program, that's what they do. Black men surviving the 90s. When I did my PhD at the University of Sheffield, I did a study with Black men in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Sheffield, England, looking at how Black men survive in societies where they're expected to fail. And phenomenal work that led to the book Race and Wellbeing. Some of you may have seen that book. But in that work, we did 2 conferences, one in Sheffield, England, and one in Halifax, on Black men surviving the 90s, bringing Black men together. First time ever. Black men were coming together in a positive way. And I remember when I started that work, I was so excited. You know, I went to my first social work education conference, and the older faculty are always interested in what doctoral students are doing. So I remember telling this very well-known white woman feminist what I was doing in my doctoral work. And she said, well, why on earth would you waste your time doing research on Black men? I was speechless and devastated. And I respected this woman. I still respect her. I'm not going to tell you her name, so don't anyone ask me. I'm going to just let her be. But my response to her, this is what I want you to listen to. My response to her was this. Well, you know, I'm not doing research on Black men. I'm doing research with Black men. And that's a difference, philosophical difference in terms of how we do research, the why we do the research that we do and how we do the research that we do. I was bringing Afrocentric perspectives into research even at that point. And that was back in 1992, 1993. So I've already talked about the first Afrocentric social work course. The first time I taught that course, it was an elective. I didn't know if we'd get any students signing up for it. 30 students signed up for it. 20 of them were white students. And I was thinking, okay, how am I going to teach white students how to do this work? And I had a very creative assignment, a media watch. And the media watch was so profound that 10 of those 30 students worked with me at the end of the term to create a video of their video pieces that we put into a little project we called Stop, Look, and Listen. And that project actually won a Human Rights Award. Stop, Look, and Listen. And it was all about racism in the media. And that was the way that I was able to teach non-African people about using an Afrocentric lens in their work. A couple of other examples I want to share with you. Because We Matter. The Because We Matter work was work that we did with the provincial community services, social services department. A group of Black workers came to me and said, I want you to lead a project through the Association of Black Social Workers, a healing program. The Department of Community Services recognized the trauma of racism in that department, and they made a commitment to do this healing work. The healing work wasn't just about individual healing. It was really about individual and collective healing. And through that work, that department now has an Afrocentric child and family well-being unit. Can you imagine? Sometimes I think about the work that we've done that started just by naming the trauma of the racism, but also being very committed to those 4 Ps, right? The personal, the professional, the political, and the policy. And that's exactly what we saw happen in that Because We Matter program. And they've done amazing work. When we started that work, there were no Black people in that whole department in any leadership roles. Now they have several, including the person who's heading up that Afrocentric family and child well-being unit. Absolutely amazing. And they've invited me to speak at their annual conference in a couple of weeks' time. I see work happening in other places as well. In the primary healthcare, there's a Nova Scotia Brotherhood, which is focusing on Black men's health. There's a Nova Scotia Sisterhood focusing on Black women's health. These are amazing initiatives that never would have happened if we hadn't dared to raise these issues through that Afrocentric lens. Research, the reparations project, some of you may have heard about that. The Canadian Association of Social Workers with the Association of Black Social Workers did a project looking specifically at the need for reparations in social work. And Dr. Dave S. and Dr. Chris Walmsley, they led that work. And CASW, the Canadian Association of Social Workers, they've committed to implementing every one of those recommendations. Committed to doing reparations in social work. Committed to naming the harms caused by racism in social work. These are huge. And I've already talked about the book, and now I see the Africentric social work course is now being taught in other schools of social work. Faculty of Social Work at Calgary, Carleton University, and Trent. We've got Trent represented in the house here tonight. So some of you may be wondering, you know, I think about this journey, you know, the 45 years, almost 50 years now. Where was there critical hope? In the Race and Wellbeing book, we talk about critical hope. And so when I think about the critical hope, I find that critical hope in all of those 4 Ps, but I also find the critical hope in the 4 As. So when people are more aware, and they have a deeper analysis of these issues and also their own, remember I started by talking about centering self. When people have a better sense of who they are and their place in the work, they're more likely to commit to actions. They're more likely to be authentic allies, not performative allies, but authentic allies. That's where I have found the hope. So when I think about that hope, I think about the principle, Nuzosabo principle Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. So I think about my family and the strength I draw from them. My birth family, but also my chosen family, some of whom are here this evening. I think about my community. That's the lifeblood almost, you know, that ongoing commitment from community. I think about the colleagues that I've worked with over the years. They've been instrumental on this journey. I think about students. Many of my former students are here. I think about the students who've been, a lot of times, you know, students want you to tell them exactly what to do with an assignment. Tell me exactly what you want. No, I won't. Because I want you to make this yours. So I always try to do creative assignments. I always try to get students to think outside the box. I always get students to try to think beyond what's immediately in front of you. And so I've worked with some incredible students over the years, and some of them, you are here this evening. I think about the adversaries. Now, some of you may be surprised to see that, but they have helped me over the years as well. Let me tell you how. They have helped me to prepare for resistance. They have helped me to learn how to overcome resistance. They have helped me to strengthen my resolve. So I mentioned the very negative things that I was seeing on social media. And as I reflected on that and worked through it, I came through it more determined than ever to be more public about some of this work. So like the student who said, you know, she's a good teacher, but a little too much Black stuff. So what did I do? I gave them more. So for all of those people who are saying, she's way off track, I have to give them more. So I'm determined to give them more. And then the allies are essential to this work. So looking back to move forward, when I look back, I know there are many successes, and I know we didn't stop to celebrate them as successes at the time. Because they were small. They were small wins. So today I say, let's celebrate the small wins. Celebrate the small achievements, because they do add up. We know we're dealing with more complex problems today, more difficult issues, but that we need to strengthen our resolve and deepen our analysis on these things. But I believe we're also better positioned today than we ever were. I started by saying, look at who is in front of you this evening. That's power. And we're using our power to do good. That's the difference. And the journey continues. Everyone in this room is going to take something from this evening and carry it forward. Asante sana. Thank you very much.
Have a seat. I'll sit with you. How to say thank you. How to say thank you after such an inspiring. It's just an honor to hear you speak. It's been a while. I did sit there taking notes of some things because indeed this is very personal for me. Afrocentrism is very central for me. I've been in the field for quite a while. And I can share with everyone, we're hoping to emulate some of what Dr. Bernard has started in Nova Scotia over 45 years ago with the Black Social Worker Association here in Ontario. And we're in the process of developing. There's a couple of us here tonight, and we've been meeting. Your description of your journey resonated with me in so many ways. The transatlantic trade ship, I always look at that. I look at it on a regular basis. It has meaning, and as you said, in terms of going back in order to come forward, it does that for me. I really heard when you spoke about the Nguzo Saba, because they have a lot of meaning for me as well, sticking with Afrocentric principles. It also resonated for me when you spoke about standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. And for me, I'm very grateful and really appreciate your guidance as we try to develop ours here in Ontario. The challenge of being the first. It's expressed to you in gratitude, but I know it's a burden and it had its challenges, overcoming and using the master's tools. It's a challenge for us as a clinical social worker because we're trying to navigate things that weren't intended to lift us up. And so indeed, incorporating the Afrocentric principles is how we're able to do so. And then the audacity of change and leading change. Very grateful, very grateful. I imagine everyone here this evening has particular words that really resonated for them. Those were some of the more significant ones that I hold on to for quite a while. Very thankful. You shared with the audience that it's been a year in coming. It's been a long time coming, agreed, a very long time. But we're very happy and honored to be able to share this time with you. We want to thank you, Dr. Bernard, so much for the inspiring, informative, reflective journey that you shared with us, the work that you've done to uplift Afrocentric social work and Afrocentric principles and practices. As you said, we're in a time now where that is particularly relevant. There was a time when we dare not say the words. We just thought it in our heads. what was the Afrocentric meaning that it had. Now we can say it out loud and we can help others to understand the meaning that it has to an African-centered person. In sharing your experience and expertise this evening, you're helping to strengthen the field of social work, not only in Nova Scotia and the diverse communities that we work with here, from our clients to our faculty, to our students, all of us, we very much appreciate this knowledge. We have a small token to say thank you that I'd like to give to you, and a small gift to say our thank you and gratitudes for your time. I'd like to invite everyone to join us for a reception. Myself, Senator Bernard, and Dean Williams will be here with you. And we invite you to join us as we just heard and celebrate the 10th anniversary of our Distinguished Speaker series. Thank you all for joining us, those online and in person. Oh, I skipped the Q&A. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I imagine, just as I had thoughts and reflections, you may have some too. I'm worried about that parking meter, sorry. I've got time. Anyway, I don't know if there's anyone online, but if someone could kindly monitor if there's any questions online or comments, and then if anyone in the room has any comments online they'd like to share, please wave your hand.
I'm a graduate of U of T social work faculty in 1983. This is a big, I never saw very many people that look like me. In my
Yes.
classes or anything. So this is unbelievable. The dean, you, and all of the students who are just there and coming. There were so many questions that no one could answer. In terms of how to represent and how to bring these very fundamental issues about our experiences and experiences of various marginalized communities. My first placement was in a Native Crisis Center. That's what we called it at the time. And my supervisors had nothing to offer in terms of how to manage those issues. And there was no Google. So this is, I'm almost speechless, and people who know me know that I'm often not speechless. But I'm just so proud and so happy to see how far we have come. I know that there's lots of work to do, but we should really, really celebrate.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
Please stay in touch with us, please.
Thank you very much. I actually came in late, but this is really of my heart. I was the graduate of the class of '69. So 55 years ago, after coming to Canada in 1964.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I think in the whole of the St. George campus, there were 20 Black students. I'd like to go back a bit. My father was M.D. McGill, 1947. He was the first Black to win a Jerningham Medal in Science. And he did medicine at McGill between 42 and 47, at a time when Blacks and Jews couldn't rent. On the buildings, there were very clear statements. Blacks and Jews need not rent. As a result of that, my mother came in 1944, married him. I had two university-educated parents when I started here in 1964. My sister was born at the Royal Vic, but then my mother was pregnant again, and my mother had to take the boat, the Queen Mary, and was rocked back and forth and went into premature labor in Trinidad. And at 4 pounds, I was born with no incubators, no NICU. So in fact, I've been surviving for 78 years in August. I'm also the longest survivor of an H1N1 virus known to Johns Hopkins.
Oh, wow.
And again, this had to do with my being the only Black in the social work class of '69. There was a placement in Hamilton at Shadok McMaster at St. Joseph's residential school, and I worked with children 6 to 8-year-olds who were all biracial, all face and fay, all wards of the state. Nobody wanted to go to Hamilton. It was refused twice by Jewish students. I got my placement last. I had to go to Hamilton. I spent nights, I was living on $130 a month, but had to go to Hamilton. So we stayed in the sleaziest motels, and we went by bus, a Jewish girl and myself. Notwithstanding, after 3 weeks of this, the children gave me what they had, which was the novel H1N1 virus. For 4 days, I called a GP who was the head of family practice at a hospital, which I wouldn't name. And for 4 days, he said to me, "You only have the flu." Until I ended up at the ICU near dead at the age of 22. However, I'm grateful to my classmates who had conscience, and they decided we would work as a group, and so I aced it. But I still wasn't going to be allowed to graduate because they wanted me to go back to Hamilton the following year to make up 500 hours. Anyway, we took the university to court. And we said to them, okay, you won't let her graduate. Tomorrow is graduation, and letters are out to the Globe and Mail and to the Toronto Star. We would tell them what a shitty group you are. And so the day before graduation, I was allowed to graduate. But then, I missed graduation because I came down with chicken pox, which I had missed all my life as a child. I came down with Adam chicken pox. So I missed graduation. Oh, there's a piece I forgot. The piece that I forgot was that I met a wonderful social worker who was a field supervisor at U of T, Dr. Edith Herker, who was a Czech Holocaust survivor. And so when the battle with U of T started, and they started saying that I was perseverating, that I only had the flu despite the fact that I was in the ICU at Women's College Hospital, she had the strength to hire me because she said people in the Holocaust died because they had no hope. So she would give me hope of a job if I could ever graduate to be a social worker. I needn't look for a job, I had one. I said to her, "That's lovely, Edith." She says, "I have spent more time with you." She saw me every single day for 3 weeks. She dealt with my depression. She dealt with the horrors of the Faculty of Social Work. So anyway, the war continued and we decided to take down the professor who was using us and not crediting the students an iota. So we decided as a group, mainly white students, but 2 of them men of the cloth. Of 9 social work students, we could take the faculty down if they didn't let me graduate. However, I never made it to my graduation because of the said chicken pox. I started work 10 days later because I was put in quarantine for another 10 days. Is it still Coxsackie? So continuing my journey, I was the first Black social worker hired for Scarborough, the ghettos of Scarborough in 1974. And then I did this until retirement in 2011. While I was with Toronto Catholic District, I worked in the ghettos of Scarborough. And I'm proud to say I saved quite a few children whose favorite subject was recess. And they were all fleet of foot and their favorite subject was recess.
Yes.
And they picked up their drug packages in the malls, given to them by their dear parents. And there were also the other little girls whose parents were, let's say, how should I put it? What did they do for a living? They were pimps and they were the pimps' ladies. And they got their children into sexual trafficking at 9 and 10. Needless to say, friend social worker did not approve. So friend social worker got threatened at times by crazies that my kids would be kidnapped because I took their kids into care. So, you know, it was a wonderful time. But I must say, having lived 5 years in Africa as well and doing university administration, I lived 5 years in Nigeria. That made me resolve to save with gentleness and with love as many little Black kids as I could find. And so we established all the Tropicana and all the Black programs in Scarborough. And so I am so grateful for you. It's a much more complicated matter right now. But when I graduated when I retired in 2011, I was asked whether I would do some of my storytelling and whether I would volunteer time to the faculty. I'm now ready to do it, having spent 9 years in bed with the said virus. I can finally walk again and I have the energy to volunteer some time. I know the program is on at Scarborough, so.
Yes, thank
You
you.
have a sitting duck.
Thank you. If you can share your contacts. Yes. Thank you. Is there anyone online? And I see a hand over here.
You are amazing. You are amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing so much. Thank you. I'm checking in to see if there's anyone online and then I'm recognizing, there's no one online. Thank you. There's a hand over here, Sirat.
Thank you, Dr. Bernard. I don't know if you know that University of Toronto Chancellor designate is Jamaican Dr. Wes Hall. And I would like to have
Absolutely, I just heard that news,
yes, I would like to have your comment on having the representation in such a high office at U of T. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know Wes Hall, and I know the work that he's done. The work that he's done with the Black North Initiative is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And I certainly did a little happy dance when I saw the news about his appointment as chancellor at U of T. So you want my thoughts on that? I think, I was really pleased to see it. I think it's important when we have people like Dr. Hall in positions like that, it's important that they not just be there as, what's the word I'm looking for? Tokenism. As long as it's not tokenism, but I know Dr. Wes Hall, and he wouldn't accept a token position. And if people tried to make it a token position, he would address it. But that's something that I've addressed in my own career.
Yeah.
I've been a token everywhere I've been. But what I've said each time I've been in a position, I've said, look, I know I'm a token. So let's get that out of the way, right? I know I'm here as a token. I'm just standing up, but I'm a little nervous, so I didn't want to fall off the chair. So here's how I have dealt with that. I don't mind being a token if it opens doors. I won't, yes, positive disruption. I won't be a token if it's closing doors. So, I don't want to be here if you want to hold me up as an example. Hey, look, we got one. Literally 2 weeks after I was hired at Dalhousie, the person who was president at the time, we were at a Black History Month event, and the president was introducing me as the token hire, right? So he didn't use the language token. First of all, he got my name wrong. So he introduced me as Sandra Bernard. We're so happy to have Professor Sandra Bernard here. She's the first African Nova Scotian. I was beside myself with rage. And the room was filled. Look, the room looked something like this room now, actually. And I remember when I stood up, I thought, okay, this may be my first week here and my last week. Because I started by saying, I know I'm a token here. And first of all, my name is not Sandra, it is Wanda. And here's a little side joke. My partner's ex's name was Sandra. Oh no. I said to myself, now, how did you know that? I wanted to piss you off. So I said to the president and everyone in that room, I said, look, I know I'm your token hire. And I don't mind being the token hire as long as it opens other doors. And guess what? They didn't fire me. So Wes Hall's nobody's token. And he'll do a great job. He does a great job with whatever he does.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to have him in that role.
Yes.
Thank you. We do have a question online.
Okay, the question is, can a Bachelor of Social Work student join or volunteer with the New and Growing Association? And if so, how?
Oh, that's in regards to the Black social work. So yes, just get in touch with us. Yes.
And how would they get in touch?
Good point.
My name is Andrea Allen, so it's andrea.allen@utoronto.ca. They can send me an email.
That's exciting.
Yes, moving forward. Yeah, we have a couple of people here from not just Toronto, Hamilton and Brampton, who are also going to be joining with us on this journey. So any other questions, comments? Thank you. Here's one here.
And I'd like to, I'm only kidding, I'm not going to sing. Thank you for all that you shared with us. You've been very generous with your insights and your wisdom. And it wasn't until after you had said why you had put adversary that it really started to dawn on me. And then when our participant also spoke about all of the adversities that she's been through, that it's like, okay, it's the journey. It's the journey, and being grateful for it all because it gives us an opportunity to not only grow, but also bring people with us. So again, I want you to thank you for making that tweak in my mindset. It was really powerful for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I hesitated about putting that there, but then I thought, you know, it's part of the journey. It truly is. And when I think back, you know, I can look back and I can think about some of the trauma from some of those hard experiences, but I don't focus on the trauma. I focus on how I survived it, how I became stronger coming through it, right? And I can look back at it now and recognize the strength of that.
Yes, it's a journey. One of the things that I think is important, though, is for us to hold on to those memories because they help others who come after us. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. We do have a winner I'd like to announce for your book, Afrocentric Social Work. The winner is Misha Fairfax Engott. Is she here?
This
Did you
is
know?
incredible.
Did you
This-
know? You don't know. Do you know what you want? Oh, yes. Okay, good. Okay, good. Come on over.
Say something.
No.
Aren't you U of T grad?
Yes.
Yes, yes. This is really pretty incredible. So we have to tell the story, right?
We do.
So when I was talking earlier about standing on the shoulders of ancestors, two of the people who were mentors, chosen parents, amazing, amazing people in my life are Lois's parents. And for you to win this tonight, oh my gosh.
So I was just struggling because Mika is my son, who is in the faculty of architecture here at U of T. And at the last moment, he had something to do school related. So. that's
You're
why I was like, do I
representing.
go? Do I not go? But
What's your son's name? That was
Mika,
Oh,
yeah,
Well, congratulations.
that's amazing.
even more so, yes.
And he looks like a
Yes.
dad, so.
And I know African tradition would acknowledge that this was meant to be.
Absolutely,
It was meant to be.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I didn't hear.
yes. That's why I came up reluctant, thinking, yep.
I saw you. I saw your reluctance. I wasn't sure if you knew why. Maybe you didn't know.
Okay.
You know, the senator is with us for a short time, but you touch so many lives. So many lives. And it's such a pleasure to see the amount of people who hold you so dear. I reflect on that and think about I'm not the only one. So now, we have another question.
Very quick question. Where can the book be purchased?
Oh, it's published by Fernwood.
Yes.
And so you can buy it directly from them, but I think it's probably
Yeah,
available on Amazon as well. I see some
Probably.
heads shaking.
Yeah.
And
I got it on
Indigo.
Bloor Street. I got it on, what's the bookstore on Bloor Street again called? Does a different book list have it? That's great.
Oh,
That's great.
yes.
Bathurst and Bloor.
So if you can buy it from a different book list, please buy it from them.
Sure, absolutely. And say Dr. Bernard sent you.
Yes, yes, yes. We actually did a book launch there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So once again, we're back and I'm going to again express my gratitude for the time you've shared with us this evening, the knowledge, the history, and the learnings that you've shared with us. And I would like to give you your gift and your certificate that I was so eager to give you earlier.
So I have them.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that. And so once again, we're inviting everyone to join us for a few moments for a reception. And we look forward to you joining us again.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.